Find your next investment at yieldstreet.com. Yield Street, the leading private market investing platform.
These bills are crazy.
She has no idea she's sitting on a gold mine.
Well, she doesn't know that if she owns a life insurance policy of $100,000 or more, she can sell all or part of it to Coventry for cash, even a term policy.
Even a term policy?
Even a term policy!
Find out if you're sitting on a gold mine. Call Coventry Direct today at 800-383-9200 or visit coventrydirect.com.
This isn't just your normal bike. It folds, it unfolds, and it just goes. Need to climb that hill? No problem. And if you're looking for speed, well, you've come to the right place. 28 miles per hour, up to 65 miles of range. And equipped with hydraulic brakes, this is the Electric XP 3.0. Fully foldable, fully assembled, ships free. Simple as that. Go to electricebikes.com and come ride with us.
Is it possible to fall in love with your home before you even step inside?
Discover the Magnolia Home James Hardy Collection, available now in siding colors, styles, and textures, curated by Joanna Gaines.
All investments should be poked and prodded before they're purchased. So at Federated Hermes, we put our investments through a ruthless vetting process because we want to find the small issues before they become big ones.
Together, we have the opportunity to build a more sustainable and inclusive future. At the Bloomberg New Economy Forum, we help make this possibility a reality by cultivating new connections among global leaders that transcend geographies, industries, and ideologies. Because when global leaders work together, the outcomes benefit all of us. Learn more at BloombergNewEconomy.com.
Feels an age ago, but boy, the collapse of Sam Bankman-Fried's FTX, it sent shockwaves throughout the crypto market, and it rather lined up in time for a new book called Number Go Up. It's inside crypto's wild rise and staggering fall. Bloomberg's investigative reporter Zeke Fox goes down basically an entire rabbit hole to learn more about digital tokens, lesser-known mechanics of the industry. And, well, Zeke, am I fair in saying that you came back kind of underwhelmed by the whole situation? It felt as though it was just funny, raucous, absurd, but at times pretty shocking. Remind us how it all began.
So I started out like a lot of people, just FOMO. Like I saw my friends getting big scores on Dogecoin, Solana, like whatever. I thought the whole thing was kind of annoying. It seemed dumb, but I got sucked in. I decided to investigate, and I found myself on like this crazy adventure. And but 2 years later, I was in Cambodia investigating crypto-fueled human trafficking. And then I was at Sam Bankman-Fried's penthouse in the Bahamas just before the cops showed up. So even though I resisted, I was glad I went down the crypto rabbit hole.
I can imagine when you start to ascribe writings around human trafficking that those are the moments as a journalist you need but don't always want. I mean, what was the really dark underbelly of what was happening in the crypto world?
So you always hear things about like, oh, crypto might be used for money laundering or other illicit purposes. But what I found is that there are whole like office parks in Cambodia, in southwestern Cambodia, where there's like floor after floor of people who are working around the clock under threat of beatings and torture, sending spam text messages to people in richer countries, trying to trick them into investing in crypto and other like crypto and gambling scams.
Was there any repercussion from that? Are you starting to see, I mean, ultimately we had to see a blow up of gargantuan proportions for regulators, for people to start to become involved and dig more deeply on what ultimately was the FTX showdown. But what about human trafficking in Cambodia? Who is looking at that?
Yeah, so it's starting to get more attention from like Interpol, the UN. It's like an international issue. But within the crypto world, like when I was it's been sort of ignored. Like when I went to go talk to Sam Bankman-Fried for the last time at his apartment when things were blowing up, I was like, have you read about any of this? Like, do you realize that some of these criminals are sending money like to your exchange? And he's like, like that sounds bad.
So go into his psyche. Like, obviously you saw him at probably the most extraordinary moment, but what do you think his overwhelming drive was? Because we've got to remember the trial is happening relatively soon and he's still deeming himself, not guilty.
So when I met him, I was fascinated by this idea that, like, when he was a teenager, he was like, I want to do something good for the world. Somebody convinced him the best thing to do would be to get rich. And then, like, 10 years later, at least on paper, he's one of the richest guys in the world. And some people think that, like, it was all a lie, he was a monster the whole time. I actually think that this drive, this belief in his own self-righteousness, led him to take insane risks and led him to where he is today.
Hubris. I mean, ultimately, the reason crypto is sort of like a media gift that keeps on giving and an extraordinary rabbit hole for you to have gone down is sort of celebrity meets vast quantities of cash meets overnight success meets ridiculous acronyms all sort of bombarded into one. There's a lot of schadenfreude. There's a lot of like, all these celebrities who lost vast amounts on NFTs. But I mean, you bought a Bored Ape at one point. I mean, how do you think this ends up playing out? Ultimately, everyone loses money?
I mean, anyone who's seen like the last couple of years, if you've paid any attention, it's hard to say like, oh, let's run it all back. Like, let's wait for the next cycle. I think that's pretty unlikely. But it was pretty fun to be a part of it this last time. And yeah, buying a Bored Ape, I got to go to Ape Fest, which was like a week-long party for people who owned these $100,000 ugly cartoon JPEGs.
But that's loyalty, right? That's creating a club. You think that's dead entirely?
The party cost, I mean, for 20 grand, you got to go mill around with a bunch of drunk dudes. I did get to confront Jimmy Fallon about the investment advice that he'd given these people. So for me, I think I was happy I went, but I think most people are going to be more mad about all the money they're losing than happy about, they got to see Amy Schumer tell some jokes about NFTs.
Maybe Jimmy Fallon wasn't so pleased you were there either, but Zeke, I'm glad you were there. And to tell the story, what an amazing read. Just go read it. He's always got some incredible anecdotes and really deep, thoughtful, important reporting. Zeke Fox, we thank him. Number go up. It's now available for purchase. Meanwhile, let's talk about another key book you might be wanting to look at, the biography about Elon Musk. It's shedding light about, his often dismissive behavior when given advice by powerful advisors. Walter Isaacson's Elon Musk comes out this week too. Bloomberg News social media reporter Aisha Counts. You've had a deep dive on it. Anything particularly shocking in there as someone who covers the ins and outs of Elon Musk day in, day out?
When you start to cover Elon Musk, you realize you shouldn't be shocked by anything, right? Expect everything. But there were a few anecdotes and details that I thought were interesting. So he had more advisors than I had initially realized. So people like David Zaslav from Warner Brothers Discovery advised him and was saying, hey, you're kind of engaging in some self-destructive behaviors that are not helping advertisers want to spend money on your platform. And they had about an hour-long conversation about that. And he was like, you should focus on video. You should make your ads better. I think Musk kind of ignored that because he continued to send out tweets and things that kind of irked advertisers. But it was interesting that I didn't know that Zaslav advised him at that point.
I mean, 95 chapters and 600 pages. How much of this is about leadership style? How much of this is going to sort of inform us about what apparently could well be happening within the businesses he runs at the moment?
I mean, I think it gives you some sense of how he is as a leader, right? There's a lot of stories and details of Musk kind of going out and taking charge or making erratic decisions, which we all kind of thought he was doing that and sort of knew from what he was doing with like Twitter, which is now X, or other companies. But you really start to see kind of behind the scenes how many people were saying, hey, maybe you shouldn't do that, right? Even down to his own brother was like, I don't know if you should tweet that, and was not able to sleep at night because he was worried about what Elon might tweet. So you start to see details like that there were more people in his inner circle that were sort of advising him, and Musk kind of just made his own decisions.
And to that point, Aisha, does it therefore drive an investor base looking for dedication, someone who is completely hands at the wheel, to pardon a pun, of Tesla, ensuring that he is doing what he needs to be doing when it comes to an incredibly valuable private company that is SpaceX?
I mean, it's a good question, right? I think investors are probably mixed. I think it sounds like some, right, especially some venture capitalists that he's close to, like David Sachs or Andreessen, liked that Musk sort of was willing to break the rules and go out and do things that people said couldn't be done. And then other people were like, I don't want to deal with this. He's too erratic, and I can't trust what decision he's going to make. Like the chair of Tesla at one point was like, hey, we're concerned about how your work on Twitter and X is distracting from what you should be doing at Tesla. And I'm sure SpaceX investors felt the same. So it's a mix.
It's a mix. And of course, he's got XAI as well to be taken under his wing. Aisha Counts, really fascinating deep dive on the book that many are going to be eyeing up. We thank you. Meanwhile, coming up, look, we've got to go back to Cupertino. Live at the Apple Wonderlust event, our own Ed Ludlow has the latest ahead of the all-important unveil. From New York, from San Francisco, this is Bloomberg Technology.
People are excited about what AI will do for them. We're excited about what AI will do for business. Introducing Watch and X, a platform designed to multiply output by tailoring AI to your needs. When you Watch and X your business, you can build AI to help coders code faster, customer service respond quicker, and HR handle repetitive tasks in less time. Let's create AI that transforms business with Watch and X. IBM, let's create.
Every night, it's the same thing. After dinner, you start soaking, scrubbing, and scraping your stovetop. It's a nightmare. Well, now you can wake up to a clean dream kitchen every day with StoveGuard, the slide-on stovetop protector that stops all the messes before they start. Sauces are rinsed and sayonara, gone in seconds. Sticky messes are no challenge for StoveGuard. Macaroni and cheese comes off in a breeze. Even baked on, caked on oils, boils, fats, and splats are no match for StoveGuard.
The fun part of cooking is the eating, not the cleaning up. The time that it takes to clean the stove, especially from oily products, is so long. StoveGuard is super easy to clean. You just rinse it, and there's literally nothing left to clean up on the stove.
Each StoveGuard is custom designed and precision cut to fit your stove model.
We cook a lot of spaghetti, but the water could boil over and stain the stovetop, and then the tomato sauce that'll bubble up, and then you really gotta. Now, I just pick up the StoveGuard, take it to the sink, wash it off, and I'm done. I couldn't imagine an easier way to do it.
StoveGuard has thousands of 5-star reviews. It's ignited a revolution in kitchens, and it's so easy to order. Simply locate your model number behind the door or drawer of your stove and enter it into StoveGuard.com. And our US-based team will send you your custom-cut, perfect fit, beautiful StoveGuard. Don't settle for cheap imitations that are weak. StoveGuard Premium is 6 times thicker than the competition and stronger. Go to StoveGuard.com right now to order your custom-fit StoveGuard and get free shipping. And if you order now, we'll also send you the MicroGuard that will help you say goodbye to all those splatter messes in your microwave. Just pay a separate processing fee. This is not available in stores. Go to StoveGuard.com right away or scan the QR code on your screen. Order now.
The Apple Wonderlust event starts in, just a few minutes' time, 1 p.m. Eastern time, 6 minutes from now, Ed. You're live there in Cupertino. Getting exciting?
Yeah, I'm getting excited. This is a big event. It actually feels like a much bigger event than WWDC when we got the Vision Pro. And it kind of makes sense, right? Remember, WWDC is on the developer side. This is about iPhone. $200 billion of sales last year, 50% of revenue. It touches people all over the world. We know what's coming. 4 variants of the iPhone 15. What we don't know is about pricing. Like, what if they raise prices in a big way?
And whether people want to be going to that average selling price. Because it's interesting, isn't it? It dovetails at a moment where they've been looking for new types of buyers, a middle class growing in India.
Yes.
But also that speaks to the supply chain changes that we see at hand as well.
This was really important Bloomberg reporting overnight. According to our sources, this will be the first launch where an India-assembled iPhone will hit the market in India and other markets around the world straight away. Traditionally, it's made in China, and then 6 to 9 months later, the lowest spec base models of iPhone start production in Foxconn facilities in India. What we're hearing from sources is they're accelerating that, starting straight away in India. which speaks to the supply chain story.
And maybe just shows the focus on diversifying a consumer base that at the moment we potentially see headwinds coming, particularly in the Chinese buyer at the moment as well. Ed, you're going to be telling this global story, but it's an investor-based story, it's a revenue-driven story, and we're going to be all across it because coming up, we've got our coverage continuing. It's a Bloomberg Technology extended special edition. We're going to be focused on, guess what? Apple, as we count you down to the annual product launch just a few minutes away. We're going to be live right here from New York, right over there in Cupertino. And this really is a focus on a raft of products, the high end, the Pros, the Maxes, the overall 15s, what they're going to have on offer, the cameras, the chips, what goes into them, and indeed a fair focus on the smartwatch too. From New York, this is Bloomberg Technology.
Carvana has hundreds of thousands of five-star reviews and counting.
The whole process was really simple and easy. And this is my third time selling to Carvana.
You just enter your license plate or your VIN, answer a few questions, boom, you get a real offer.
Sell your car to Carvana today.
Are you going higher or lower? With Underdog Fantasy's Pick'em game, that's the only choice you have to make. It's easy, it's fun, and it's the best way to put more sweat in watching your favorite team. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com to get started.
I pay over $100 a month for cable when it's half the cost for Fubo TV. Get all the channels you want on the only live TV streaming service rated #1 in customer satisfaction by J.D. Power. Try free at FuboTV.com.
Hi, I'm Jay Jackson. For almost 20 years, Abacus Life has been purchasing life insurance policies from seniors. And in just seconds, you can use the free calculator at abacuspays.com to learn what your policy might be worth.
For many of my clients, selling their life insurance to Abacus was right for them and their estate plan.
Don't sell or lapse your policy without going to abacuspays.com first. There are no fees and no obligations. Get the real value from your life insurance when you need it with Abacus.
Yo, dude, you need some help?
Don't worry about me.
Yo, there's no shame.
No shame? You don't know my family, man.
It's okay to ask for help. Find a licensed therapist at BetterHelp.com.
False or misleading search results can negatively impact your life. A bad online reputation can put you at significant risk of losing job opportunities or new customers. Reputation Defender helps clean up your search results, wiping away negative first impressions, allowing truthful, positive content to rise to the top. Don't you deserve to have more control over how you're represented online? Get your free reputation report card at reputationdefender.com or call 1-877-866-8555.
Is this what doing your laundry looks like? Wouldn't you love it if it looked like this instead? How much easier is this? One strip, one load. That's why we made True Earth Eco Strips laundry detergent to help make America's second most hated chore a little bit easier. All the while helping eliminate 700 million plastic jugs from landfills and to make the future of our planet better for our children. Simply toss a pre-measured strip in with your wash and let your washing machine do the work. No measuring, no mess, no more plastic. Meet True Earth, the better way to do your laundry.
Some things are better left to a professional.
In hindsight, probably shouldn't have tried to remove my own appendix.
Like when it comes to finding financial advisors.
What was I thinking?
So leave it to Smart Asset to find them for you. Take the free quiz at smartasset.com. Then you'll be matched with up to 3 vetted fiduciary financial advisors. To get started, take the Advisor Match quiz now at smartasset.com.
I was this close. This close.
From the heart of where innovation, money, and power collide in Silicon Valley and beyond, this is Bloomberg Technology with Caroline Hyde and Ed Ludlow.
I'm Caroline Hyde at Bloomberg's World Headquarters in New York.
And I'm Ed Ludlow here in Cupertino, Apple Campus, the Steve Jobs Theater behind me. This, Caro, is a special Bloomberg Technology and everything iPhone at Apple's Wonderlust event.
And everything change of cord, USB, and everything focus on AirPods, on the watch as well. We have got so much to drive forward, as well as some of those headwinds when it comes to China, when it comes to supply chain, when it comes to those all-important chips that I know you love so much. Ed, we've got the perfect person to be setting us up into all of this. Bloomberg's Tom Giles joins us for really already what we anticipate. Mark Gurman just comes out with really a fully fledged view of what we're going to be delivered. The point is how much importance this is to an investor base, Tom.
Are you hearing me? Yes. Say that again, Caroline.
Yeah, Tom, what are you thinking about in terms of how important this moment is to the investors as well as the consumers?
Yeah, this is a huge moment for Apple. This company, there's been a lot of anticipation for this event. But this year, it's particularly high, and that's for a couple of reasons. One, we expect this to be a major upgrade in a lot of areas. Camera, chip. This is Apple's most important device, and they are going for the gusto here. There is a lot of upgrades. There's a lot of changes. This is a major one. This is not incremental. So in that regard, this is hugely important. And remember, the backdrop here is a decline in global smartphone demand. And that's something that Apple is really having to fight against.
I think we're having a few technical issues at the moment, Tom, but I just want to drive it home with you a little bit more in terms of we understand the power of the iPhone. We understand the $200 billion it brings in terms of revenue per year. I'm interested in, ultimately, with a price point that may well rise, how much can they really ensure a consumer will go there, Tom? I think we've lost Tom Giles, unfortunately. But Ed, I think at the moment in Cupertino, there's going to be a lot of excitement, a lot of people waiting with bated breath for the upgrades. And we've got a perfect guest to be sort of driving that conversation forward.
Yeah, and hey, I'll remind our audience that there's a reason Apple pre-records this presentation and then plays it out later to get rid of those technical issues. Absolutely delighted to be joined here at Apple Campus by Annette Zimmerman, Gartner analyst. And, you know, Annette, we've gone through all the specs we're expecting. Lots of focus on the higher end Pro and Pro Max, updated silicon, updated camera. For you, what is most important to return Apple to growth?
Yeah, so I mean, at the moment, it's of course still a little bit speculation what we will see, and I think there's going to be some kind of feature that we haven't heard about yet because it's called Wonderlust, right? The event. So wonder, or merging the word wonder with Wanderlust, which means literally translated to be the desire to travel, and I think we all have this desire to travel. Since the pandemic, and that we have most of it behind us. So I think there's going to be something around certain sensors that will make workout and traveling and just moving around even more precise and more accurate and more engaging, basically. So I think there's going to be lots of around new precise sensors and these kind of things.
The event is underway, and in the early stages they're showing video with people using older generation of iPhone, older generation of the watch in the real world. But iPhone seems to be everything. Just explain to our audience how important the refresh cycle is for Apple, every new generation of iPhone that they release.
Yeah, so Apple targets obviously different user groups. So one user group is the early adopters that usually upgrade their phone maybe every 2 years and sometimes even every year. So that is usually the group that they target with their very high-end devices. But then you also have a very loyal user group that is more in the mid-range and maybe more on the budget side that sometimes they upgrade only after 5 years. As long as you can upgrade the operating system, and I think especially it's going to be, or this event is usually around the higher end and the mid-range type of devices and the users. And for those users that maybe wait a little bit longer for upgrading. Apple also has some interesting price offers, usually with those that that come or that have been introduced earlier in the year, so or last year maybe even. So all of this will be important. It's the whole thing about Apple targeting these different user groups, but also really paying attention to these different segments and try to make them happy.
Yes. You are watching Bloomberg Technology's special coverage of Apple's Wonderlust event. We're expecting iPhone 15. Annette Zimmerman, Gartner analyst, with me. And in the early stages, the presentation started, we're a couple of minutes in. They've been talking about how Apple devices help consumers and users in medical emergency situations. At the beginning of our conversation, you mentioned sensor technology. We know that there are some updates to Watch coming, but talk about that healthcare segment and indeed the emergency case scenario with Apple.
Yeah. So at WWDC, we saw some really interesting developments with iOS and the ability to, to support people with their physical health, but also with their mental health, right? And so we're seeing Apple expanding significantly into different areas. So it's about our behavior, our health, our mental health, our physical health that will, I think, is part of our everyday life, and we need to embrace it, and we need to, or we can use specifically the Apple devices to support us in our journey for health.
I can confirm that Tim Cook is now speaking on stage, and he said that he's going to be talking about Apple Watch and iPhone. Not really surprising. One thing that's going to impact consumers everywhere is the move to USB-C. It's a European Union mandate, deadline end of 2024. What effect will that have for Apple switching to USB-C?
It has a big effect on Apple because they obviously had to make technical and physical changes to the design and to, basically to the entire roadmap of devices that will be coming. And there will be more on top of that will be made, or changes will be made because the EU is also looking for better repairability of devices. So and Apple has to invest in new designs to make those devices more repairable, and also make spare parts available, make it affordable available to users, so you can do your own repair if you want, these kind of things. But that impacts Apple and the entire industry, really.
Tim Cook is using these early stages to talk about WWDC June, the M2 chip, Ultra chip that went into the 15-inch MacBook Air, Mac Studio, Mac Pro, basically saying the feedback and response has been fantastic. We will see if the feedback or response is as good for this next generation of iPhone, which is what we will focus on most. Annette Zimmerman, Gartner analyst, so good to have you here in real time during this Apple Wonderlust event. Caroline, back to you in New York.
I know, so great to have the on-the-feeling sense of this moment. And actually, we're hearing from Tim Cook as well, saying, look, Apple is still on track to ship its Vision Pro in early 2024. Now we are still anticipating the announcements regarding the Watch, the AirPods, the new ways in which you're going to be charging them through the USB, and indeed what we're waiting on the iPhone 15 range. But let's go back to Tom Giles, of course. And Tom, this is about consumer awe, but it's also about investor reality. And at this moment, they've got plenty of headwinds. We're worried about Chinese consumer. We're worried about supply chain as well. How do you think they managed to tackle or offset that narrative at this moment?
Yeah, and don't forget, they've also got Huawei in the mix. Huawei out with a new phone, with a new operating system, and gathering a lot of momentum behind it. So there's a lot that they have to do here today to prove that this is a really special upgrade. As we were talking about earlier, this isn't your average instance where they're adding a few things, they're iterating around the edges. There are some substantial changes. If you talk to Mark Gurman, he will tell you that this is a major set of upgrades. And that's what Apple is doing to really take the attention off the competitive threat, the pressure from the Chinese government on using the iPhone in that country, the pressure from Huawei, all of it. This is Tim Cook's moment to take your attention off of that and show once again that we're adding really special features to the iPhone, the faster chip. Again, this telephoto lens with the camera that's letting you take these up close photos with the iPhone, things you can't do with other devices. This is his moment to remind people we're doing things that are really special with this camera. And it's really important because it makes up half of the company's revenue.
And to be fair, like, analysts still seem convinced by all of that at the moment, Tom. I'm looking at 35 buy ratings. That's 2/3 of all the analysts out there rate this stock a buy. And in fact, there's still about 15% upside potential if you're looking at a price target consensus of 204. But we have had this sort of knock to the overall market capitalization of Apple over the last few trading days. And ultimately, how important is the fact that they can nudge us up on a price point? How resilient does the US consumer need to be at this moment?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Apple has to walk a really fine line, right, with the way they price this device. And that's why they've got multiple devices that are going to be getting upgrades today. And exactly where are they going to tinker with pricing? How much do they add those high-end features to the lower-end devices? All of those things, this is the kind of thing that Apple spends a lot of time thinking about very strategically, and they tend to be very smart about it, not loading too much into the lower end devices so that they can still sell them at a little bit of a discount to the higher end devices. How do they keep those margins going in the right direction? And if you look at their gross margins, they're going in the right direction. So how does Apple do this, particularly at a time when you're seeing overall demand for smartphones globally dropping off? Q2 was a really tough quarter, both for the iOS, that's Apple, and Android, that's the Google operating system that's in so many global devices. Yeah. But something that Apple did in the second quarter was they weathered the storm better than Android. And that's what Tim Cook really wants to see Apple continue to do going forward.
Well, we'll have so much more from Tim Cook. From you, Tom, we thank you so much, all regarding this big unveil, where we understand that it is official, the S9 of the watch has arrived, and indeed it's got an S9 chip, so we're going to have some, what they call major performance improvements overall. We understand that the COO, Jeff Williams, is on the stage at the moment introducing this next generation of the Apple Watch, and it's touting an improved performance overall, including the new chip, and calling it the most powerful Apple Watch chip to date. Now, we're going to be talking so much about the intricacies of this announcement with Ray Wang, who's the CEO and principal analyst of Constellation Research. His take on what is being announced at the Apple event. It's over in Cupertino. That's where our Ed Ludlow is too. This is Bloomberg Technology.
Let your feet take you wherever your spirit wants to go. The all-new Hurricane helps you navigate any surface so it truly stands alone. Move forward with confidence at hurricane.com.
Hey, human, what if you could accomplish something instead of endlessly following up? How about if you collaborated with other humans in other departments? What if making a project template was quicker than putting on work pants? What if you could keep up with projects without chasing other humans down? What if how humans worked actually worked for humans? Operate at peak human. Smartsheet.
Can a handyman fix my leaky faucet?
Home questions don't have to keep you up at night. Get peace of mind with Thumbtack. We'll connect you with local pros for any home project. Thumbtack, the easy way to care for your home.
I've spent centuries evolving with the world. That's the nature of being the economy, observing investors choose assets to balance risk and reward, with one element securing portfolios time after time: gold. Agile and liquid, a proven protector. An ever-evolving enabler of bold decisions. An asset more relevant than ever before. Gold, your strategic advantage.
When U.S. jobs numbers are released, Bloomberg brings you crucial data at terminal speed and instant expert analysis. Nobody covers jobs day like Bloomberg.
All
All right, the latest headlines coming out of this Apple Wonderlust event center on the next generation Apple Watch, the S9 or 9 series with an updated piece of silicon, S9 chip, 30% more powerful GPU. Caro, in terms of some of the things that this manifests itself with, dictation, 25% more accurate, 18 hours of battery life. Two ways of looking at it, that's all-day battery life, although Mark Gurman posting in the Bloomberg Top Live blog that it's basically the same as prior generations. Also, the ability to engage with Siri directly to the watch without latency in a more secure method. That's what they're leaning on with this latest watch.
Yeah, more effective use of point. Also, integration with the HomePod is an interesting one as well. But overall, new gesture control being integrated. They've got to be pushing really the way in which they're standing out from a crowded space when it comes to connected devices, the way in which we measure our health, Ed. Because, well, many have been getting into the rings, the watches of other variations too.
Yeah, something really cool they've just announced with this latest generation watch. Series 9 has gesture control. So with a one-handed gesture, you can engage with the watch. It's called double tap. So I don't know how needle moving that is, right? The ability to wave at one's wrist and a watch, but we will find out because there is somebody who definitely has a stronger perspective on this than you or I, and that is Ray Wang, Constellation CEO and principal analyst. Good to see you here in Cupertino. Based on what I've just reported for you on the Apple Watch Series 9, what do you make of that as quick reaction?
Yeah, welcome to the hometown, like Cupertino. I think the really important thing that's going on here is the important piece that they're going from silicon to chip, and they're using their silicon to manage the battery life. They're using the silicon to handle the AI capabilities, and all those are really important, especially when you think about what Apple's known for. They have full control of their ecosystem, and that starts with the silicon. And so they're showcasing that on the watch, and of course, I think we're all waiting to see if there are other things that are going to be monitored, right? Other health indicators that I think would drive other people to go to the Ultra, and of course to the Series 9 watch.
Yeah, the expectation is that we would have 2 size variants of Series 9, 1 new variant of the Ultra. These are the early exchanges of this event. Apple Wonderlust is underway behind us in the Steve Jobs Theatre, and you're right, we're waiting for 4 variants of the iPhone 15. How important is it that the hardware upgrades on the Pro side are substantive to drive an upgrade cycle?
Well, when we look at the entire upgrade cycle, we're talking about 1 billion iPhones that need to get 5G, right? And it's been happening over the next 3 years. And so as we're moving those in that super cycle, the big piece is really, is a telephoto lens potentially enough to get you there? The USB-C, got to do it because it's a regulatory requirement. Is it also going to be something around, is it a battery life? Is it a feature? Is it a service that's going to take people to that next level of using the iPhone? But the chips make a big difference. The battery life makes a big difference. And potentially a 48 megapixel camera may make that difference.
I want to go back to the watch for just a second. Some other information is the Series 9, let's call it the base model, has double the brightness, 2000 nits. That goes back to the last generation of Ultra. What is the strategy you see there from Apple? They're basically taking last year's tech and putting it into this year's base models.
Yeah, we're seeing things. If you want the Pro or the Ultra, you want the top level, you'll pay a little bit more for the new chip, and then you're going to see that gradation come into different markets. Let's take India, for example, right? The big talk about India. You might have different price points given where the demographics and the socioeconomics are. You'll have a different price point in the UK, of course, and you'll have a different price point if you're in the Middle East. And because it's a luxury brand, that's what's driving that capability.
Right now on stage, Apple are talking about their environmental goals and the progress they've made in sustainability and materials. Is that an important factor for you?
It's important for me, especially when we think about circular economy and we think about how much energy is required to create a device, how you bring that back into it. Apple's been a leader, especially in sustainability and some of those ESG goals. And it goes from not just the battery, but it's also the materials and the recycling process. I've probably turned in, maybe you as well, turned in a couple phones in the past to do that. So.
Okay, forget what we've reported and what we think is coming. What do you want to see in these higher-end iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max?
Yeah, I think people are looking for better features. They're looking for experiences, for example, the ability to tie these to more devices. They're looking for the eventual integration between Mac OS, iOS, and Watch OS. And then, of course, they're trying to figure out, hey, maybe there's a sneak peek into Vision Pro and what's going to take us into Vision Pro as the replacement for the Mac. Like, that integration has always been an Apple fan's dream, right, to be able to bring all those things together.
Ray Wang, Constellation Research CEO and Principal Analyst, joining us in real time, Caroline, here in Cupertino. The Apple event is underway.
It is underway, and there's a focus on the environment, on sustainability, and we understand the latest headline is it's going to be phasing out its leather from its iPhone cases, and many had taken that cue from, well, moves over at Hermes of late. Coming up, we're going to have so much more coming for you. The analysis from Apple. Thomas Husson, he's Vice President and Principal Analyst over at Forrester Research, going to be joining the show live from Cupertino, from New York. We've got it all covered. This is Bloomberg Technology.
What do you see on the horizon? Uncertainty or opportunity? Whatever you see, at PGIM, we can help you rise to the challenges of today, when active investing and disciplined risk management are needed most. Drawing on deep expertise across the world's public and private markets in pursuit of long-term returns. PGIM. Our investments shape tomorrow, today.
Interactive Brokers pays up to 4.83% on instantly available cash in your brokerage account. How much interest can your bank or broker pay? Interactive Brokers' conservative and prudent risk management uniquely positions us to pay up to 4.83% on uninvested, instantly available cash in your brokerage account. The best informed investors choose Interactive Brokers.
You automate sales tax with Avalara. You don't have to worry about things like changing tax rates or filing returns.
Avalara.
The first time you made a sale online with GoDaddy was also the first time you heard of a town named Dinosaur, Colorado.
I just got an order from Dinosaur, Colorado.
Start an easy-to-build, powerful website for free with a partner that always puts you first. Start for free at GoDaddy.com.
And so we have the news coming from the Apple event in Cupertino, thick and fast. Of course, a Watch Series 9, going to be more powerful, swifter. We're going to be having the ability to, well, hand gesture to be able to wave fingers at it. Double tap is what it's called. Interoperability with your HomePod as well. Really, this is about being faster and more powerful. We're also seeing some more nuanced announcements around perhaps the wind down of any leather at the moment when it comes to being used in iPhone cases. So a push on sustainability. But we all await the iPhone 15 and the array that we get there. Forrester Research Vice President and Principal Analyst Thomas Husson is with us. And Thomas, you were expecting perhaps an ultra version of the watch. What more do you anticipate from the phone lineup, and is it going to be enough?
Well, I'd expect a significant incremental innovation and improvements on the lineup of the, especially on the iPhone and the iPhone Pros. We've heard right now about some of the sustainability efforts. I think what would be very disruptive is to hear more of a device as a service offering where you have a bundle of hardware, content, and some circularity services, repairability. That would be a great step. I'm not sure we're going to hear that tonight, unfortunately. So is it going to be enough? I think Apple will maintain its leadership when it comes to smartphone innovation. The bigger question, I think, given the economic context, and we don't know yet, is going to be around pricing.
Precisely, and many anticipating that prices will rise. We're going to boost the average selling price. We're still focusing at the moment in terms on the environmental impact. Lisa Jackson, the EPA chief, saying about how by 2030 Apple devices will be net zero in impact. That was a Tim Cook ad as well. I'm interested in really the Huawei and Chinese perspective here as well, because there's been a lot of headwinds on Apple stock of late. Do you think that the innovation is enough at Apple to fight off the homegrown innovation of a Huawei?
Well, I think so from a pure innovation standpoint. I think the bigger question is about the geopolitical context in China and the fact that indeed the iPhone has been banned to potentially dozens of millions of employees working in public state employees or for the government in China. What will be the consumer sentiment of Chinese consumers? is a very big unknown, given the fact that the greater China represents about a fifth of Apple's revenue. So that might be another reason for a potential price up tag in other regions.
We keep an eye on the price point and indeed what we're going to hear when it comes to the new phones. Forrester Research Vice President and Principal Analyst Thomas Husson joining us on what we've so far been digesting. And it is a focus on the environment. Lisa Jackson, I misspoke earlier, of course, was a former EPA chief, Apple's head of environment now, really outlining the efforts. And Tim Cook saying by 2030, Apple devices will be and having a net zero impact. But give us the nitty gritty on what we got from at least connected devices and watches in particular, because many had braced for more.
Yeah, look, I think we probably got a more substantive upgrade to the Series 9 watch, the lower base model, than we thought we'd get. New silicon S9 chip, 30% better performance on the GPU side. But you're right, though, that real focus on the environmental side of this story. If you take Series 9 as an example, north of 80% of it is made of recycled materials. That includes some of the core metals like tungsten and copper. You know, and the pledge from Tim Cook is that by 2030, all devices will have net zero. So it's a commitment, but as our guests have made the point this whole show, it's about their supply chain and how they're adjusting to that.
Well, we'll see how that titanium comes into the mix in a moment. That's, of course, what's anticipated with the lineup of phones. You do not want to go anywhere. That does it for this special edition of Bloomberg Technology, live from Cupertino and from New York. But we're going to have full recaps throughout the remaining day. This is Bloomberg.
If you love fantasy sports, you have to check out Underdog Fantasy. Underdog users have already won over $500 million in prizes, and you could be next. Just go to UnderdogFantasy.com to get started.
This tiny payment thing is a giant pain. Hi, ladies. Alex from US Bank. Can she help? How about a comprehensive point-of-sale system that can track inventory, manage schedules, and customize orders? That's what US Bank Business Essentials is for. What about a new oven? Can US Bank help us there? We can serve loans in as fast as 12 minutes. That would be a big help. Huge. Jumbo. Ginormous.
Finding ways to make your business boom. That's what US Bank is for. We'll get there together.
Is this what doing your laundry looks like? Wouldn't you love it if it looked like this instead? How much easier is this? One strip, one load. That's why we made True Earth Eco Strips laundry detergent to help make America's second most hated chore a little bit easier. All the while helping eliminate 700 million plastic jugs from landfills and to make the future of our planet better for our children. Simply toss a pre-measured strip in with your wash and let your washing machine do the work. No measuring, no mess, no more plastic. Meet True Earth, the better way to do your laundry.
Hi, I'm Jay Jackson. For almost 20 years, Abacus Life has been purchasing life insurance policies from seniors. And in just seconds, you can use the free calculator at abacuspays.com to learn what your policy might be worth.
For many of my clients, selling their life insurance to Abacus was right for them and their estate plan.
Don't sell or lapse your policy without going to abacuspays.com first. There are no fees and no obligations. Get the real value from your life insurance when you need it with Abacus.
Here's your parachute. Packed it myself.
Certain it's okay?
Mm-hmm.
Are you for imprint certain?
Certainty matters, like the certainty of congratulating coworkers or saying thank you for being a customer with promotional products from 4imprint. Our expert team is dedicated to making your satisfaction a certainty.
Packed it myself.
Land the perfect products at 4imprint.com.
4imprint, for certain. BetterHelp makes therapy accessible to all for a number of different reasons. Sometimes people are looking for that relatability. They're looking for someone who looks like them.
Being able to share parts of your identity with your therapist can be really important.
False or misleading search results can damage your life and your business. For over 15 years, Reputation Defender has been helping people clean up their search results, wiping away negative first impressions, allowing truthful, positive content to rise to the top. They can even help protect your online privacy by working to remove your personal information from data brokers that expose it. Don't you deserve to have more control over how you're represented online? Visit reputationdefender.com or call today for your free consultation.
From the heart of where innovation, money, and power collide in Silicon Valley and beyond, this is Bloomberg Technology with Caroline Hyde and Ed Ludlow.
I'm John Olson. Welcome to Bloomberg Markets.
And I'm Matt Miller. Let's get a quick check on the markets at this hour. We're seeing very little change in the S&P 500, gains on the Dow, losses on the NASDAQ, but the benchmark S&P right now unchanged at 44.86. You do see investors buying treasuries. That pushes the yield down, but only very slightly. The yield on the 10-year, 428.61. We do see the Bloomberg Dollar Index inching back higher again right now, 1251, but also not a lot of change there. NYMEX crude, on the other hand, is gaining a lot, more than $2 a barrel to 89.30, and we're seeing Brent crude, the global benchmark, at a high for the year. And John, most assets not seeing a lot of movement because traders, I think, waiting for those all-important CPI U.S. inflation numbers tomorrow morning, but we certainly do see movement in the crude market.
Yeah, absolutely, and that has left energy stocks in New York higher. It's true in Toronto. The tech sector also getting attention, Matt, and obviously we've been tracking the headlines coming out of Cupertino with Apple as we await more details on the latest iPhone offering. We've heard from management so far about updates on the Vision Pro rollout, the new Apple Watch plans as well. Stock was weaker heading into the event today, which is continuing at this moment. Shares are still down about 1%. But the tech malaise that we've seen today, Matt, comes back to the Oracle story as investors reflected on the quarter and the outlook and just didn't like what they'd heard after the stock's run up this year. Consumers are in focus these days, and every time we've got a company reporting on quarterly results out of that sector, a Casey's General Store is a good example today. Kind of interesting to see a well-received quarter here, 10.5% higher. Part of that, the Bloomberg intelligence team says, is their fuel margins, some of those locations with gas stations. And then in the banking sector, we are watching some of the regionals, Matt. Zion's, for example, is up more than 8%. They had shared some slides ahead of an investor presentation that painted a relatively upbeat picture. And I think for the challenges we've seen within the regional banking sector, that was a well-received piece of information on this trading day.
All right, interesting movers there. Two other companies that we're watching very closely are Ford and General Motors. As the companies negotiate with the United Auto Workers, the two sides are racing to avoid a strike as the Thursday midnight deadline approaches. A possible strike could change the auto and economic landscape in the U.S. Jose Munoz is Hyundai and Genesis North America president and CEO, as well as global COO for Hyundai. He joins us now. Jose, great to have you on the program. I wonder what you think of these negotiations. Of course, you have non-union work, and on the one hand, that's great because lower costs for you. On the other hand, if they get a bigger contract in Detroit, you could see an already tight labor market get tighter. How do you see it?
Well, thank you for having me, Matt. Well, first and foremost, we just want the best for the industry, right? We don't have unions today in the U.S. because this is what our workers decided to do, basically because our strategy has always been, and it will continue to be, to try to offer our workers the best possible conditions. So, in fact, I was 2 weeks ago in Savannah, Georgia, where, as you know, we are making a multi-billion investment for the company, about $12 billion in total. And then we found out that according to the county, our wages are about top 25% in the area. So which means that good wages, good health conditions, good paid holidays, etc., is the best guarantee to succeed. Also, I would say that we have unions in Korea, and we've always tried to provide our workers with the best conditions. We found good agreements so far in the last few years. Thankfully, we had no strike. So we wish the best to everybody because any disruption would have potentially impact in the supply chain. Although the last 2 years, we've learned a lot how to be less reliant on one or another supplier. And also, we are a very much vertically integrated company. So I hope things will end up in good place for everybody and we'll continue to produce cars and sell cars.
Jose, you got, products that are hot right now. A lot of people normally who would be looking for a luxury vehicle are going instead to Genesis, or maybe Genesis is just stepping up and making luxury products. In terms of Hyundai, you've got the Elantra N making a splash, the Santa Fe plug-in hybrid, as well as my personal favorite, the Ioniq 5. But are you also able to undercut your competition in terms of pricing? Because right now, car makers in America, or car buyers in America, I should say, are facing very high prices.
Well, you're right, Matt. We are very proud with the good achievements of our luxury brand, Genesis. I was, in fact, looking at some data before, and I found out that since we started in a full year in 2006, we have increased our volume 8x till last year to more than 56,000. And hopefully this year will go well above 60,000. So good design, good technology. I wouldn't say our cars are the cheapest at all. We just want to offer the customers the best at a competitive price, but it doesn't mean the cheapest. I think the electrification is something that is helping us and is helping our customers, and they're realizing that we have a very compelling offer in the market. As you mentioned, Hyundai with the Ioniq 5 and Ioniq 6, which have been 2 years in a row the workout of the year. I think they're very good offers, and then we're trying to do our best to compete in the market, even if our vehicles don't qualify for IRA, other than on the lease segment. And as you know, we became last year the third global OEM in sales, and with more than 6.8 million. And then these first 6 months, we continue to be the third one. This is driven by the US, where we are only behind GM and Toyota, as you know. So far, so good. We'll continue to do our best with everything that we got. But product quality, good design, good features, I think is the best guarantee to success.
You know, you mentioned the possible supply chain disruptions from a potential strike in Detroit at a time when electrification, as you noted, is such a priority for so many of the auto makers. Have you put, Jose, any estimates on what a strike could cost the industry internally? Have you guys put together any numbers on what that potential cost could be?
Well, we don't. I think, master the couple of last years during the pandemic, where our company, I think, did a better job than others in terms of finding alternative sources and maximizing the flexibility of our systems to continue to supply vehicles to the consumers, right? And nowadays, as I mentioned, I think we are in a better position than we were just 2 to 3 years ago in terms of having alternative supply, especially in the North American market, namely in the USA, right? So also, we are very vertically integrated. Our companies like Mobis or Globis that are supplying to both Hyundai, Kia, Genesis, they're very, very strong. And after, all this 12 billion investment in mainly Savannah and Bartow in Georgia, I think we're going to be even more localized. But I'm very pleased to say that we're so confident that today we're announcing here in Detroit, Michigan, the grand opening of our, we call it the STEEL, Safety, Test, and Investigation Laboratory, where we believe we're going to have the state-of-the-art, the very best facilities to do this. Most of our competitors do this through third parties. And according to the president of IIHS, I think probably we have the best facilities in town.
One of the other issues that comes up with Hyundai today is competition from Chinese automakers. What would you say to those who are curious about how your company is positioned versus some of those fast-growing players?
Well, I think mainly in the European markets is where we can see that competition, also maybe in the Middle East, not to mention China, right? But so far, we've been able to weather that quite well. So again, the European consumer, the Middle East consumer is appreciating the design, the quality, the safety features, competitive prices without discounting, and more importantly, a great service. I think the consumer is appreciating the fact that we put the customer first within our big image of the progress for humanity. So when they compare us to other, as you mentioned, Chinese companies and others, they realize that if they ever have a need to service the vehicle, probably they will be much better taken care of by Hyundai than by some of those competitors. We don't neglect them. We need to continue to do our job because they have improved a lot, but we like the competition and we'll try to do an even better job.
Tesla cutting prices in China, but here as well. You know, I asked earlier about whether or not you can undercut competitors with price, but, you know, do you have any room to cut prices at Hyundai and Genesis?
Well, we, as mentioned, try to focus on offering value. We don't want to be the cheapest in the market. We want to be simply competitive. There is always room if you look at the financial results of the company, but definitely our strategy is to optimize the revenue, the margin within the capacity that we have, and this is what we've done the last few years, and I think the results are showing that. So we'll try to maintain our position. We are not having plans to cut and slice our prices.
You know, I'm seeing headlines here, Jose, that Bernard Looney, the chief executive of BP, is going to resign less than 4 years in the job. This according to the Financial Times. I bring this up with you because I have asked Bernard Looney, why don't they put EV chargers at every BP station? You know, gas stations all over the place, but I can barely find a charger. And you're pushing, you know, electric vehicles. You had an ad during the kickoff of football with the all-new Kona about getting back into the commute. How do you convince buyers to switch to EVs when there's difficulty in charging, especially, you know, when they get to work? In my garage here, they'll charge me $20 a day to plug the car in. So, you know, that's just the same as paying gas.
Well, in fact, the consumers are very smart always, right? And then to your point about the Kona EV, it's a great design, you know, great autonomy. It is having a great driving dynamics, fantastic safety features. And then we are making really extraordinary efforts to satisfy our consumers' needs. For the time being, as you know, we offer on every Hyundai that we sell 2 years of complimentary charging within Electrify America, and then 3 years for the Genesis brand. And as we speak, as you know, we signed recently an agreement with other 6 or 7 OEMs to create Iona to guarantee that our consumers will continue to have the best conditions in order to charge their vehicles. On top of that, we are thinking on potentially launching our own specialized and high-level service charging chain for our Hyundai and Genesis consumers. And our dealers, all the Ioniq dealers, have invested in level 2s and even level 3 chargers. So I think the consumers are realizing that the ranges are getting longer and longer. The grid is getting better and better. Still some room for improvement. And you know, the fact is, for example, you look at the numbers that we had in August. In August, we sold about 20% of our sales were electrified vehicles, including EVs, hybrids, plug-in hybrids, and hydrogen. And this represents 50% more than a year ago. But 10%, it was battery EV, and it was 100% plus versus a year ago. So the consumers see the value and they're buying EVs.
Jose, thanks so much for joining us. Jose Munoz there, Hyundai and Genesis North American President and CEO, as well as the global COO, I should say, for Hyundai. Now, coming up on the program, what we've learned this hour from the Apple product launch happening right now as it announces the iPhone 15. This is Bloomberg.
Explore endless design possibilities to find your personal style. Endless hardy siding colors, textures, and styles. It's possible with James Hardy.
Spills, splashes, boilovers, and burns. Your stove is a mess, and all that soaking, scrubbing, and scraping are keeping you in distress. Hi, Lou Caputo here with StoveGuard, the #1 top quality stovetop protector on the market and a must-have in every kitchen. Look, these messes are no match for the StoveGuard. Ooey gooey cheese and macaroni, thick red staining sauce, even this sticky melted candy. They just rinse right off in seconds and your stove stays sanitary, spotless, and clean. So you can clean less and live more.
I love to cook, but I absolutely hate to clean. With StoveGuard, I rinse it off and then I'm back to spending time with my family.
Now, we've all seen the old tin foil trick, but it just doesn't cut it. And these other brands are just way too flimsy and leave way too much uncovered. Look how much thicker StoveGuard Premium is than the competition. There's no comparison. And it's custom designed and precision cut to fit perfectly around every burner. Plus, every StoveGuard is made from durable, fire-retardant, FDA-approved material and PFOA and BPA-free. It's almost impossible to destroy, and it always rinses off perfectly clean.
Stoves are expensive, and I don't want to have to go out and buy a new one. I want to protect the one that I have, and StoveGuard lets me do that. Keeps my stovetop looking like new, like I just bought it.
Ordering your own StoveGuard Premium is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Just locate your model number behind the door or bottom drawer of your stove. Type it into our easy-to-use website and voila! Order today and we'll ship it to you free. That's right, go to StoveGuard.com right now for free shipping.
And if you order now, we'll also send you the MicroGuard to help you say goodbye to the splatter messes in your microwave. Just pay a separate processing fee.
This item is not available in stores, so scan the QR code on your screen or go to StoveGuard.com today.
Get your fixed income fix. Watch Bloomberg Real Yield every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern, right here on Bloomberg, your global business authority.
You deserve better than that. I'm hungry, I'm in a hurry, I don't have time to make anything healthy. You could if you had a BlendJet. BlendJet? It's the portable blender that makes the healthy choice the most convenient choice. I don't know. Seems like a hassle. Wrong. Just pour in some milk, add some frozen fruit, and bam! You got a nutritious and delicious smoothie. That is good. You're welcome, sad office guy. Get yours today at blendjet.com. Are we in an ad? We sure are.
This is Bloomberg Markets. I'm John Lipman with Matt Miller. Time now for our stock of the hour. All eyes have been on Apple this hour as it unveils the iPhone 15. And, of course, product launches for these new Apple phones. Always critical, Matt. This is a device that makes up roughly 50% of the company's sales. Last year alone, that amounted to more than $205 billion.
Right. They should be critical. The problem is if they're not a big deal, then it doesn't spur enough people to go out and upgrade. Let's bring in Bloomberg's Ed Ludlow, who's outside the event in Cupertino, California. So, Ed, wrapping a couple of the high-end models with a titanium strip and saying they've upgraded the camera, is that going to be enough?
We want to know if it's going to be enough. You know, there are wide-ranging estimates of how many tens or hundreds of millions of former or older generation iPhones are out there for upgrades, and it's hard to know what the consumer is willing to part cash for. What we know is that, as expected, we have two variants of the base model iPhone 15, a 6.1-inch screen and a 6.7-inch screen. Both of them get the dynamic island, which is the top sliver of the screen, a more interactive display that displays more information. The big news so far on the low-end iPhone 15 is the upgrades to the camera, 48 megapixel. The iPhone 14 non-Pro versions a year ago had 12 megapixels, so that's a pretty substantive upgrade on the camera technology. But we're waiting for the Pro line because, as you guys know, that's the strategy for Apple. Save the big technology upgrades for the higher price Pro models, charge more for them, raise average selling price, and see that you can target that customer base that is basically classed as first or early adopter.
And obviously, all this it continues to tie into the services business. Ed, the fact that this company has more than 2 billion active devices around the world and has been able to leverage that to keep growing the service side of the business as well.
Yeah, and really interesting to see a heavy emphasis on watch in the early part of the presentation. We did get a new Series 9 watch. We did get a higher spec Ultra 2 watch. But the thing that they emphasized was the performance, right? They have the new S9 chip, 30% better performance on the GPU side, matching the battery lives of former generations, but on low power mode on the Ultra side, 72 hours on the watch. But it's what you can do with it. A lot of emphasis on a medical emergency scenario, a lot of emphasis on those extreme athletes like Matt Miller up the side of a mountain with their Ultra 2. 3,000 nits of brightness, so you can really see the face of the screen in extreme sunlight. They're going for it with these higher specifications.
So bright. Just gets brighter every time I look at it. Ed, thanks so much for joining us. Ed Ludlow there outside Cupertino at the Apple launch. Now, we had some breaking news on BP. The chief executive, Bernard Looney, is reportedly going to resign less than 4 years after taking the post, this according to the Financial Times. Let's talk with Bloomberg's Alex Steele, who covers commodities for us. Alex, what do we know about Looney and why he's leaving?
Okay, well, first of all, this is unconfirmed from the Financial Times. Now, what we do know is back in 2020, when Looney unveiled his strategic plan for BP, it was very much about a renewable focus. It was EV charging stations. It was going to be solar. It was going to be wind, particularly wind. They recently had a very strong auction from Germany's offshore wind portfolio. What happened, though, over the next 3 years, in some ways, wasn't really his fault. You had the pandemic. You had oil prices very volatile and cratering. And then you had a big push against alternative energy back into oil and gas. Now, a lot of the European oil majors sort of slipped into this pattern of diversifying very quickly in alternative energy. Just take a look at Shell. And they had to, over the last 6 months or so, roll back some of those ambitions. Now, Looney had made the point that they were going to be investing less and less and less in oil and gas. But as the returns for alternative energy got worse and worse and worse, they cannot live up to the returns that you're going to get in an oil and gas field. So we had to pare back some of that lack of investment. So instead of investing, say, 10% less, it was going to be 5% less. Those are just examples of numbers. So that happened in February or March of this year, and it's been a very difficult road for these oil majors that have really bet on alternative energy. There's also been a big push to give money back to shareholders, with BP has. He's really tried to get the message that it's we need oil and gas and alternative, but 3 years ago, it was really an or. And I think that message has been really hard to deliver for some investors. He really did try, and not for the first time when it comes to BP, to oversee a significant transition. And many said the U.S. producers were left behind. U.S. producers looked like they got it more right. Again, not confirmed, but potentially Bernard Looney resigning as CEO of BP.
Helpful context as we watch this one unfold. That transition story, obviously key in the energy sector. Bloomberg's Alex Steele joining us, co-host of Bloomberg Markets, Americas and European Close. This is Bloomberg.
Internet without trackers, without malicious websites, without malware-ridden files. Zen. Your data more secure, your connection protected. Be more cyber zen. Get NordVPN. Enjoy cleaner, safer, and more private internet daily.
There's an easier way with Thumbtack. Download the app today and care for your home from top to bottom.
Why is Aaron happy? Well, Carvana has tens of thousands of cars under $20,000. So Aaron's folks could help hook him up with a new ride. We'll drive you happy at Carvana.
Only at Vanguard, you're more than just an investor, you're an owner. Our financial planning tools and advice can help you prepare for today's longer retirement.
Hi, Mom.
That's the value of ownership.
You automate sales tax with Avalara. You don't have to worry about things like changing tax rates or filing returns.
Avalara.
Let your feet take you wherever your spirit wants to go. The all-new Hurricane helps you navigate any surface so it truly stands alone. Move forward with confidence at hurricane.com.
Well, today, Franklin Templeton filed an application with the SEC for a spot Bitcoin ETF. It comes as SEC Chair Gary Gensler continues to share doubts about crypto, saying at a Senate hearing that the industry is rife with fraud and abuse. Kaylee Lyons co-hosts Bloomberg Crypto and was at that hearing and joins us now from D.C. And Kaylee, this was an event that many within the crypto industry, especially in those rulings on Ripple and Grayscale against the SEC recently, were looking for how the industry would play out from here, what the regulatory roadmap might look like.
Yeah, and I'm not sure we got any real clear answers from the chairman in this hearing today. As you said, Franklin Templeton has now thrown their hat into the race with BlackRock and all of the others who have seen decisions on their spot ETF filings just deferred. They deferred them, the SEC did, back in August before the Labor Day holiday. And Chairman Gensler was asked specifically by Republican Senator Bill Haggerty from Tennessee about the Grayscale ruling and about what the SEC is doing with spot ETFs. And all the chairman said was that they were reviewing that ruling and the other filings. So no real clear answers there, though the chairman did receive some criticism, especially from Republican members, about issues like crypto as well as climate disclosures. You had other Democrats like Senator John Tester asking some questions about specifically Scope 3 emissions requirements as well. Chairman Gensler said they're trying to find an appropriate path forward, but they didn't really elaborate on any potential changes. So not too much huge news for crypto world or otherwise from the chairman in this hearing today.
All right, Kaylee, thanks very much. Kaylee Lyons there covering crypto for us and covering Washington for us. As always, we thank her. John, we're looking at not a lot of movement in these markets. The S&P down about 0.3% right now, but I think everyone waiting for the CPI release tomorrow. The Fed is data dependent, and this could go a long way to backing up a pause or maybe an eventual hike. This is Bloomberg.
Private market alternatives help you outperform the traditional portfolio by up to 40%. Meet Yield Street, the leading private market investment platform with 10 highly vetted asset classes. Diversify with alternatives. Open an account at yieldstreet.com.
Are you going higher or lower? With Underdog Fantasy's Pick'em game, that's the only choice you have to make. It's easy, it's fun, and it's the best way to put more sweat in watching your favorite team. Get started today at UnderdogFantasy.com.
False or misleading search results can negatively impact your life. A bad online reputation can put you at significant risk of losing job opportunities or new customers. Reputation Defender helps clean up your search results, wiping away negative first impressions, allowing truthful, positive content to rise to the top. Don't you deserve to have more control over how you're represented online? Get your free reputation report card at reputationdefender.com or call 1-877-866-8555.
Is this what doing your laundry looks like? Wouldn't you love it if it looked like this instead? How much easier is this? One strip, one load. That's why we made True Earth Eco Strips laundry detergent to help make America's second most hated chore a little bit easier. Meet True Earth, the better way to do your laundry.
Hi, I'm Jay Jackson. For almost 20 years, Abacus Life has been purchasing life insurance policies from seniors. And in just seconds, you can use the free calculator at abacuspays.com to learn what your policy might be worth.
For many of my clients, selling their life insurance to Abacus was right for them and their estate plan.
Don't sell or lapse your policy without going to abacuspays.com first. There are no fees and no obligations. Get the real value from your life insurance when you need it with Abacus.
There is a lot that goes into becoming a licensed therapist.
2 years of graduate school followed by 2 years of clinical training.
You literally have to do 3,000 hours plus of interactions with clients. It is quite a journey.
Follow the GPS.
Continue straight.
Are you certain?
Turn right.
Are you for imprint certain?
Arrived.
Enjoy the certainty of showing your appreciation with the right promotional products from forimprint.com.
For imprint, for certain.
It's something about having that piece of paper. Some people think that's worth more than my skills.
I've run this place for 20 years, but I still need to prove that I'm more than what you see on paper.
You just gotta be
so good they can't ignore you.
It's the way my mind works. I have a very mechanical brain.
Analytics and empathy. That's how I've gained clients.
I am more. I'm more than who I am on paper.
A newish Apple iPhone, an old Achilles tendon, and more of the same in U.S. equity markets. Live from Studio 2 at Bloomberg headquarters here in New York, I'm Romaine Bostic.
And I'm Scarlett Fu. We're kicking off to the closing bell here in the U.S. More of the same in U.S. equities insofar as we're mixed right now. The S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100, we should mention, basically sitting right at their 50-day moving average. Tech stocks the big drag here on the broader market overall. Not a whole lot of change in the Treasury market either as investors mark time before the CPI report tomorrow. You can see the two-year yield moving up slightly by 1 basis point to just 5% even. And of course, the dollar is something we've been looking at. The U.S. dollar resuming its gains after a pause yesterday. Of course, these gains are fairly modest, up only 0.1%, Romaine.
Yeah, the market certainly biding its time right now in a bit of a holding pattern ahead of key 3 data points here. Consumer sentiment data coming out on Friday, retail sales on Thursday, and of course, CPI tomorrow on Wednesday. Month to month, economists looking for a re-acceleration in headline consumer prices to the fastest pace in more than a year. Yeah, really. And an interesting, albeit somewhat backward-looking separate data point came out earlier today from the Census Bureau. It highlighted the pain the higher prices have already inflicted. Household income in 2022, it was down 2.3% when you adjust for inflation. That's the 3rd straight year of declines, the biggest decrease since 2010. And a reminder that all those wage and wealth gains over the past couple of years, they've been more or less X'd out by the higher cost of living. The inflation set up for tomorrow among one of the most read stories on the Bloomberg terminal today. One of the other most read stories, it involves our old friend Bill Gross. And as the late, great Omar Little once said, if you come at the king, you best not miss. Bill Gross, the former bond king who took PIMCO from a multi-million-dollar business to a multi-trillion-dollar firm over the course of 4 decades, knows how to hold a grudge. Gross out at the Future Proof Conference in California with Joe Weisenthal and Tracy Alloway. We're going to let you know what he had to say about his legacy as a bond manager and where he thinks his competitor, Jeff Gundlach, ranks on the list of all-time greats. It ain't high. And the latest Bank of America Global Fund Manager Survey is out. The main takeaway today, Scarlett, investors really starting to sour right now on the dollar, really starting to sour right now on real estate, and really starting to sour on China.
Yeah, there's a lot of negativity there that you just summed up. And the net result is investors are all in on U.S. stocks, according to Bank of America's latest Global Fund Manager Survey. It finds that concern this month over China's sputtering economy has sparked a stampede out of emerging markets as a whole, resulting in specific crowded trades like betting against Chinese stocks and shorting the U.S. dollar, which had been on a massive winning streak up until last week. The beneficiaries, U.S. big tech, as you can see here, which is seen as a safe haven, and Treasury bills, which are short duration government debt. Now, this most recent rush into U.S. big tech has created valuations that look uncomfortably expensive. Here's the price earnings ratio of the S&P 500 Infotech Index over the past decade, so going all the way back to mid-2013. Here's the pandemic in early 2020 that dropped down, followed immediately by a sharp recovery and more. Those were the FANG stocks days right around here. And then the hangover in 2022 as you go down, and the AI hype and a Magnificent Seven narrative really took hold again in early 2023. As recently as early July, in fact, the multiple was 2 standard deviations above the long-term average, Romaine.
Yeah, absolutely here. And before we get to our next guest, just on a word on tech, we should point out right now, shares of Oracle right now hitting fresh intraday lows here, now having their worst day going back to 2001. We're going to get to that story a little bit later, as well as a discussion about Apple. Those shares lower as well here, with the focus on tech and whether tech can still deliver the returns that so many investors had embraced earlier this year. Catherine Avery, CEO and president of Catherine Avery Investment Management, joining us right now as we kick you off to the close here on this Tuesday afternoon. And Catherine, I do want to start with these tech stocks, the Magnificent Seven, if you will, here. They were certainly magnificent in the first 6 months or so of the year, not so much as of late here. Is there anything attractive you find there?
Not for the Magnificent Seven, but I would say that you might want to look at some of the other names in tech, what we would refer to as staple tech. Those names in technology that are trading at valuations much lower than the S&P tech sector, but we need their infrastructure in order to have tech run. So, for example, names like Cisco, their data centers are what's needed to help run the new AI that's coming out. Names like Oracle and Broadcom that offer the chips and the software that would support that AI trade. These stocks are all paying dividends. Broadcom and Oracle have both had double-digit dividend increases in the past year, and we expect that to continue. I know these names have taken a little bit of a seat back in the past month, but the long-term outlook is still good for these companies, and I think that getting paid to wait makes it worthwhile.
Well, we've certainly seen some investors shining to some of those names that you mentioned just there on that list. I am curious about another sector, Catherine, that has been a big focus outside of tech, and that has been energy and sort of what I guess the future holds, specifically for the stocks when you overlay that against what we've been seeing, the fluctuation in energy prices itself.
Yeah, I think, a lot of the energy pricing, oil in particular, has been taken a step back this year because of the weakness that we've pretty much seen in China. But now, as we're coming into this second half of the year, we're starting to see supply constraints. So that's why we're seeing this uptick in the price of oil, and possibly seeing that price go up to the highs that we saw last year. And couple that again with the fact that these stocks came off of a great year in 2022, but had gotten very inexpensive in 2023, but are still delivering good earnings, lots of cash flow that they're returning to the shareholders. So again, the dividends are there, the valuations are intact, and having that price of oil move up makes that an attractive place for investors to start to look at.
And it's not just staple technology or energy. You also look at cyclicals in the same way. You're overweight that sector. I'm curious whether that extends to small caps as well, which are kind of cyclical squared in a way because they're so sensitive to every move in the economy. The Russell 2000 outperformed the S&P 500 for about 2.5 months at the start of the year, and since then it's resumed its position as being a laggard. Are small caps about to have a moment here?
They possibly can, but our focus is really looking at the larger cap names. As you mentioned before, the dollar is starting to take a step back, and that is actually good for a lot of the U.S. multinationals that not only do business here in the U.S. but have a lot of exposure outside the U.S. as well. A lot of these larger companies will be able to take advantage of that infrastructure plays going into the next couple of years. The smaller cap stocks will also be able to take advantage of that as well. So, we had, if you look back, we basically had a recession in earnings estimates in the first half of this year, and we're starting to see a reacceleration of that. But that's probably, a lot of that reacceleration is going to be coming from a lot of these cyclical names that have been able to participate in the infrastructure rebuilding.
Catherine, it was a great conversation here. We have to get you back for something a little bit longer. Catherine Avery there. She's the CEO of Catherine Avery Investment Management, helping us kick you off to the close here on this Tuesday afternoon, where everyone's focused on Cupertino, California, a new Apple Watch, a new iPhone, Scarlett, 48 megapixels, I'm told. We're going to tell you what it actually means for investors.
Yeah, but a new cord, too, a new charging cord.
A cord?
About that.
Oh,
yeah.
my gosh.
I know, they still use cords.
That's got to be worth a few $1 billion on market cap.
ARM and Instacart are generating some interest in tech IPOs this week, but it comes at a cost. We're going to get insight from a tech executive who helped take Bumble public.
And it's hard to understate just how significant the collapse of Lehman Brothers was, fourth largest investment bank at the time. 15 years ago this week, that company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and well, we know the rest of the story. A lot of conversations coming up a little bit later here about the financial regulations that came after that, and maybe more financial regulations still on tap. That discussion and so much more. This is Bloomberg.
Whatever your transportation needs, the Cargo e-bike from Lectric is ready to take on the adventure with you. The Lectric Expedition offers 1,300 watts of peak motor power and a dual battery option to take on steep hills while still carrying 450 pounds. This e-bike is in it for the long haul and can cover up to 150 miles on a single charge. Pricing starts at just $13.99. Learn more at lectricebikes.com and come ride with us.
At Interactive Brokers, independent RIAs work with the best research and trading tools designed to help them outperform the markets. Meet them at Interactive Brokers Investors Marketplace for advisors. Advisors at Interactive Brokers keep all they earn on our low-cost platform, with no ticket fees or custody charges, low margin rates, and high interest earned on idle cash. To get better results, get a better platform. The best informed investors choose Interactive Brokers.
If you're trying to get a view of the whole organizational financial health, and you're trying to do that through multiple systems, that makes it very, very cumbersome. It's not just tech, it's not just people, it's how they work together to provide that experience to the customer. As a finance organization, that's what you want to do.
This is a keepsake frame. This is actually a photo from my wedding. I'm Adam Weiss, founder and CEO of Keepsake, the mobile app that makes it easy to have your photos printed, framed, and shipped to your doorstep. You just choose a photo that you love, you can preview it in over 100 frames, and in a couple of days, you're gonna receive your photo in a beautiful, handmade frame. So if you've got a special photo on your phone, install the free Keepsake app. We would love a chance to frame it for you.
The problem with raising capital requirements over and over again is you're making U.S. banks less competitive, and that's going to push activity out into the unregulated non-banking sector. Better supervision, more diverse stress testing, better rules on interest rate risk taking could go a long way to avoid this kind of problem. I'm not sure raising the capital requirements of the biggest money center banks by 15 to 20% is the answer.
Former New York Fed President Bill Dudley, now a Bloomberg opinion columnist, talking a little bit earlier about, well, how to make the U.S. financial system safer. His comments coming on the week of the 15th anniversary of the collapse of Lehman Brothers. It was the climax of the subprime mortgage crisis, and it sent shockwaves through global markets. It triggered the largest Chapter 11 bankruptcy petition in U.S. history at the time, involving more than $600 billion in assets. And we should also point out that that same week, you had Merrill Lynch get sold, and of course, a few months prior to that, you had the collapse of Bear Stearns. It was a phenomenal time, not only for, well, the bad there, 25,000 people plus here being forced out of jobs, but of course what it wrought on our financial system and the regulations that govern it. Dennis Kelleher is the co-founder and president and CEO of Better Markets, and Better Markets is holding a special event tomorrow down in Washington, D.C. to talk, I guess, just about how far we've come over those 15 years, Dennis, and I guess the big question is, have we come far enough?
Well, thanks, Romain. Nice to be with you. Yes, we're holding a conference tomorrow. It's virtual, and everybody can join it. And we've got some big headliners, Senator Elizabeth Warren, SEC Chairman Gary Gensler, CFPB Director Rohit Chopra, and anybody can listen in. Just go to our website, www.bettermarkets.org, and sign up, and you can join us. And we've got another dozen or so experts to talk about not only what happened 15 years ago, but where we are today, what happened in the meantime, including just 6 months ago when we had a banking crisis where the second, third, and fourth largest bank failures in history happened 6 months ago. So there've been some important lessons learned. There've been some important rules, regulations on the banks and the non-banks. But the real question is, are we safe enough? And is too big to fail still too big and too alive?
Well, that's what I'm curious about here. I mean, there was no debate at the time that there was material systemic risk here, from whether it was what first happened with Bear Stearns earlier in the year, and then, of course, later with Merrill and Lehman on the same week, to be sure here. I'm not so sure you can say the same thing about the systemic risk out of the regional banking crisis, or is that misleading?
Well, given that the recent regional banking crisis is going to cost taxpayers more than $30 billion for the bailouts, keeping in mind They were bailed out because they needed capital. They were undercapitalized. That's also what happened in 2008. Merrill Lynch, Lehman Brothers, Goldman Sachs, all the big money center banks and many non-banks didn't have enough capital to cover their own losses. They also didn't have enough liquidity, and they didn't have resolution plans so that they could go into bankruptcy like every other company in America that fails. And so there have been a lot of rules put in place, but we find out 6 months ago that many of those rules weren't applicable to banks of the size of 100 billion in assets or so, a little bit more, and yet they caused a systemic event, contagion, because we saw depositors fleeing, and we saw other banks ending up on the precipice of failure that required the bailouts. And so by definition, they were systemically significant, and there's still too many systemically significant banks and non-banks that don't have enough capital. Remember, the country has never suffered from a crisis because of overcapitalized banks. It's undercapitalized banks that are a threat to this country.
And those are just banks. What about private equity and the shadow banking system that's out there? We know regulators such as the SEC's Gary Gensler has been looking into trying to rein them in and get some kind of handle over them. But that's kind of a looming threat out there in terms of whether you're seeing a lot at stake that's not fully accounted for, not even fully understood.
Well, you're absolutely right, Scarlett. There's a major problem with the under-regulation of the shadow banking system, the non-banks. They're both not transparent and they're not regulated. And Bill Dudley, your guest earlier, made a good point there. And frankly, Jamie Dimon's made a good point that non-bank system doesn't have enough regulation or transparency. There's too much systemic risk there that we don't even know about. That's what happened with AIG and a bunch of other non-banks back in 2008 that surprised everybody because it wasn't regulated. But what has to be done is not what the banks want. They're saying, don't regulate us because the non-banks aren't regulated. The fact is, banks need to be regulated a little bit more, and non-banks need to be regulated a lot. And the Financial Stability Oversight Council needs to get back in the business of regulating non-banks. And you're also right, Scarlett, that the SEC has a role to play here, as does the CFPB, both of whom are going to be speaking at our conference tomorrow and addressing too big to fail and these systemic threats from a market regulator's point of view and from a consumer financial protection point of view.
So, Dennis, what's interesting, of course, is when we talk about too big to fail, that was once a bad thing. It's become a better thing, I suppose, is the way to put it, especially in the wake of what we saw in March. Suddenly, too big to fail looked like the safest place to be. If you're going to take your money out of Silicon Valley Bank and move it to Chase, you felt pretty good.
Well, you're right, but it's perverse incentives, right? I mean, too big to fail is never a good thing, because what too big to fail really means is that the biggest banks in the country that pose the biggest threat to the financial system don't have to worry about failing, because if their recklessness or illegal conduct or just bad business decisions leads them to failure, unlike every other company in America, they won't go to bankruptcy. They'll get bailed out by taxpayers. That's wrong, and that's why too big to fail has to be reined in. That's why we need more capital liquidity on the biggest banks, no matter what Wall Street says. And that's why we need more regulation of the non-banks, and we need it fast.
Right. Well, we'll see how Washington stands up to the lobbyists. Dennis, really appreciate your joining us. Dennis Kelleher of Better Markets.
I'm glad he brought up AIG. I forgot about that. I mean, it's just September of 2008.
Yes.
I mean, you had AIG getting the bailout.
Yeah.
Of course, you had the collapse of Merrill, or basically the sale of Merrill.
The forced sale.
Collapse of Lehman, and then of course you had Bear Stearns earlier that year.
Yeah. And then there was the AIG bonuses. Remember that?
Yeah, it was like 160 something.
Yeah, that caused a lot of uproar. All right, still ahead, the clock is ticking on negotiations between the UAW and U.S. automakers. We've got the latest out of Detroit next.
Every night it's the same thing. After dinner, you start soaking, scrubbing, and scraping your stovetop. It's a nightmare. Well, now you can wake up to a clean dream kitchen every day with StoveGuard, the slide-on stovetop protector that stops all the messes before they start. Sauces are rinsed and sayonara, gone in seconds. Sticky messes are no challenge for StoveGuard. Macaroni and cheese comes off in a breeze. Even baked on, caked on oils, boils, fats, and splats are no match for StoveGuard.
The fun part of cooking is the eating. not the cleaning up. The time that it takes to clean the stove, especially from oily products, is so long. StoveGuard is super easy to clean. You just rinse it, and there's literally nothing left to clean up on the stove.
Each StoveGuard is custom designed and precision cut to fit your stove model.
We cook a lot of spaghetti, but the water could boil over and stain the stovetop, and then the tomato sauce that'll bubble up, and you really gotta. Now, I just pick up the StoveGuard, take it to the sink, wash it off, and I'm done. I couldn't imagine an easier way to do it.
StoveGuard has thousands of 5-star reviews. It's ignited a revolution in kitchens, and it's so easy to order. Simply locate your model number behind the door or drawer of your stove and enter it into StoveGuard.com. And our US-based team will send you your custom-cut, perfect fit, beautiful StoveGuard. Don't settle for cheap imitations that are weak. StoveGuard Premium is 6 times thicker than the competition and stronger. Go to StoveGuard.com right now to order your custom-fit StoveGuard and get free shipping. And if you order now, we'll also send you the MicroGuard that will help you say goodbye to all those splatter messes in your microwave. Just pay a separate processing fee. This is not available in stores. Go to StoveGuard.com right away or scan the QR code on your screen. Order now.
Even after reaching a landmark labor contract with Teamsters this year, UPS sees a bumpy road ahead. It's set to pay out the biggest chunk of its new $30 billion 5-year labor pact over the next 12 months. The CEO, Carol Tomé, says, "We put more cost in our business this year than we had anticipated in an environment where the volume has receded." So let's bring in our Thomas Black for more. Tom, so what is Carol Tomé doing to win back the customers it lost in the lead up to the potential strike?
She talked about winning on service, but we'll see if they're going to have to give some discounting as well. It's going to be a tough market because the whole industry is suffering from declines in demand. So there's a lot of companies fighting over fewer customers.
Well, exactly. But I've always thought that UPS was in sort of a little bit of a different position here. I mean, in terms of their actual competitors here, it's a pretty short list, as I'm sure you know here. Why are they struggling so much to, I guess, absorb some of these higher labor costs in a way that maybe other industries might be able to absorb?
UPS is very efficient. That's a good thing. But it also makes it more difficult to become even more efficient and absorb those costs. So they've got a lot of work to cut out for them to find those efficiencies, a lot through automation, a lot through having that unified network where they have really good visibility into their data to be able to tweak the system and make it more efficient. So that's what they're going to be concentrating on and winning back those customers. They estimate that they lost about 1.2 million packages per day of volume to competitors, and they have to go get that back.
All right, well, it's a long road ahead for Carol Tomé and UPS. Thomas Blank, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to move over now to Detroit because time is ticking on talks between the UAW and the automakers. Bloomberg learning that the UAW has lowered its pay increase demand slightly to 36% from 40%. Our Keith Naughton has more. So Keith, they're talking, that's good, but from 40% to 36% doesn't really move the needle a lot for the car makers, does it?
No, not at all. They actually are still quite far apart. I think the highest offer the automakers have made was a 16% raise. So there's a gulf that they really need to cross, and there's not much time left.
Well, give us a sense here of what the options are right now, Keith. I mean, when I see the demands that the UAW has made, and at least their argument as far as them looking back at past profits and revenue, saying that they wouldn't share in that here,